To this interesting story now, TikTok helps South African users deal with loneliness and mental health. Well, that's according to a recent survey by a social media platform itself. It found over 4,000 users feel less alone and have built meaningful connections on the app. Let's discuss this further now with Kaylee Jorgensen from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. She's also a social media expert who's developed her own application called Engage Support. Thank you so much for your time here on ENCA, Kaylee. First of all, my thought when I saw this article, I thought, how lonely must we be as South Africans to, find solace in technology?
Absolutely. I mean, thanks so much for having me. I think it is such an important topic that we need to speak about. You know, loneliness it's such a big societal problem, and just leading up to the holidays as well, loneliness really is something that a lot of individuals struggle with.
That's pretty sad for me. I don't know if it found that this is the same in any other country, but that made me worry a bit, because it also goes back to the conversations and debates on, whether you should be on your phone as long as we use cell phones at the moment, or rather have proper engagements with people. Or is it about there not being people who are willing to engage? Are we not kind enough to each other?
So look, I think there's probably a lot of different reasons as to kind of where loneliness comes from, but also what's happening within social media. So I mean, just if we look at TikTok, for example, TikTok has quick, engaging content. The videos are so short, they're exciting, they're engaging, and as a user of TikTok, we tend to feel connected, we tend to feel entertained, but also talking about other social media platforms as well. You know, there's a lot of things that we use social media for that makes us feel entertained, engaged. And that's obviously where the loneliness can decrease, or we can feel less lonely when we are online. And a lot of children, teenagers, young adults, and adults just in general are leading or leaning on social media as a way of reducing loneliness. But I think something that is really important, and you mentioned it now in terms of balance and face-to-face interactions, is social media, TikTok, any platform is not a cure, or is not a quick fix, if I can say, for loneliness. Social media can provide a temporary escape for loneliness, but if we rely on it too much, we're not then addressing the root cause of why, as an individual, I am feeling lonely. I often use a metaphor when I'm talking to children or adults, and it's donuts. I love donuts. I don't know about you, but donuts are amazing. They're delicious. I can, go to Krispy Kreme, have a huge number of donuts. But I know that if I have too many donuts, I'm going to feel sick. It's not going to be great. But I know what I can handle. And I mean, if you ask a 10-year-old, they're going to tell you they can eat all the donuts in the world. But if you go to a 10-year-old who knows what is the negative impacts of eating too many donuts going to be, they might be able to say, no, I'm just going to have one or two or three. And that's why there's a balance. So although I can have one or two donuts, I know if I exceed that limit, I'm going to feel sick. And that's where we have to remind ourselves, and coming back to social media, is what does overreliance look like? If I'm using social media or TikTok as a way of not feeling lonely or trying to fix my loneliness, what does that mean? What is that over-reliance going to look like?
And that's where I was going, in terms of over-reliance. We've been told, for instance, as older siblings or even parents have been told to please look at how much time your child spends on social media or on the phone, for many reasons, right? Not just over-reliance. Would it not lead to depression if you're over-reliant, another very serious mental illness?
Absolutely. Look, there might not be a direct link between the amount of social media kind of usage or online engagement that I have in terms of if that will not lead to depression. But it's definitely a factor that we have to consider. There's a statistic that says longer than 3 or 4 hours, I stand to be corrected. But if you spend 4 or more hours online, you've got a greater chance of developing anxiety, aggression, antisocial behavior. And we've got to understand these negative impacts because the online world is huge. The other thing about the online world that as parents, if I can just say, please be aware that the online world is not broken down into age specific categories. So for example, if I'm 13, I'm not going to go to a space on the internet that is only for 13-year-olds. So we've got to be aware, but also understanding that if I'm using social media to fix a feeling of loneliness, what about then social isolation? So now I'm spending a lot of time online, not interacting face to face. What impact is using it too much going to have on work, school, studying, sport, family, friends? You know, there's so many. And also just those unhealthy comparisons. What I'm seeing online is not necessarily what's happening in the real world. It might be unrealistic. You know, what I like to call Instagram or social media ready photos. I'm not going to post a picture of myself when I'm sad or when I'm upset or when life is really stressful. So we often have these things that we need to think about. And the other thing that it's called a filter bubble. And these are algorithms online that, you know, and whether it's TikTok or any other social media platform, but if you get stuck in a filter bubble, basically that algorithm is then only showing you content that fits with your values and aligns.
All right, it looks like her picture is stuck, but I just thought to myself, you know, if you're relying on social media and TikTok to get that feel-good feeling inside, it's going to be very problematic when you have to get out and face the real world. So social media can be good, in my opinion, but there's also, you know, some bad to it as well. But earlier on, of course, we were speaking to social media expert and SADC's registered counsellor, Kayleigh Jaggerson.